And you weren't even in prime time.
Well, we started in Philadelphia. Art would have me start, because it was 5 hours then. I would usually start at 11. My 11, 12, it would be 11, 12, 1, 2. I either started at 1, which was 10 p.m. at the beginning, or 2, which was 11,
Right.
when all of the networks went. And I'd get up at 6 a.m. That's when I would be getting off. And there were repeating subjects, and this is important. The context for Coast to Coast in Dreamland was not just UFOs, ETs. We had a very broad range of subjects that included global warming and the science behind getting vaccines for a disease and a whole lot of things. So when Art called me that day in April of 1996, it was, Linda, I've just received a very strange package. It has a letter in it. It is typed, and there are all of these metal pieces. He said, I think some of it looks like aluminum, but I don't know what I've got. He said, I want to send you some of these little pieces and see if you can find out from a lab, what is it? That was the beginning. And within a short period of time, I had been able to send one of several, there were circle and oval and squares that are in my book, Glimpses of Other Realities, Volume 2, High Strangeness, that came out only 2 years later. I started that investigation that we're going to go into in depth, and then I published Glimpses Volume 2, and it starts out with everything that I had done in this investigation chapter, the first chapter. So my goal is to report everything. And I announced that on the radio repeatedly. Whatever we've got, I'm going to report. So I had gone to Alcoa Aluminum and showed them a photograph, which shows the squares, the circles, and all of that. And they said, well, it looks from the photograph, we're dealing with what are called cutout dies, D-Y-E-S. It's used in industrial machinery and everything all the time. You take samples and you get them analyzed. And that's what Alcoa Aluminum got. Okay, so they didn't send a paper report. They called me up. This was right at the beginning. And remember, the man said, where did you say this came from? And I told him. I said, it allegedly has come from a crashed UFO at the end of the 40s, and that we're trying to find out what it's made of. And he said, well, it's 99.5% pure aluminum, which is puzzling to us because we do not produce at that purity for any market. Well, that was ding one to my mind. Wow.
Yeah.
Why would we have 99.5% pure aluminum in these die cutouts if Alcoa doesn't even produce? Okay, so now we didn't know what was going to unfold. The next thing that happened, and I'll just weave in a little bit. This was the letter. This is the original that Art sent me.
Right.
Fax. With each letter, and there were 5, and this was the beginning. And the date was April 10th, 1996.
It's an amazing letter.
Yeah, and I've only highlighted a few things to start out today. This is the letter writer, currently serving in the military. I would end up getting a long distance phone call to my office in Philadelphia. Art was in Pahrump, Nevada. And because I was on the air so much, and I gave out numbers for where people could contact me for whistleblower information, it wasn't a surprise then that I got this call. And he said, I am the letter writer with the shipments of the metal. And why this was important, because the content in these 5 letters ranges from the practical, from the amazing about that a good friend of the letter of the person who has sent us, knows Neil Armstrong. I'll get to that in a second. And in the letter, it said that I am currently serving in the military, but it didn't go into where, how, or why. It was the telephone call. He said, I am serving in the United States Army like my grandfather was serving in the 40s. I want you to know that what I have sent you is truly from my grandfather's legacy. He said, I am being shipped out to Iraq, and I do not know if I will come back alive. And I want you, meaning the reporter who is reporting science, I want you to know that this is real. This is from my grandfather's box that he died in 1974. So it was one of those clarifying, okay, Army generation, respected his grandfather. His grandfather had told him a tremendous amount about being in the Army and being a security post at where one of the many unidentified flying objects came down in the New Mexico region in the 40s. Now, here is a really, really important part to keep this going. There is in one of the letters where he gives a latitude, longitude, and I believe it is the 4th letter. Get these put together here. Here it is. It's the 5th letter. This 5th letter, so April 10th to July 5th, that was the 5 letters. It is not until the 5th letter and the phone call to me was about that time. He said, and he also was making it very clear the literal sentences that he said he typed, because I asked him in the phone call, you talk about portals, you talk about dimensional jumps. Are you interpreting? He said, no. He said, I have been typing directly from my grandfather's handwritten diary left with the metal pieces, and the grandfather died in 1974. Okay, here's one of the most important parts of all 5 letters. Didn't come till July 5th letter. Okay, because I asked him, where is the exact latitude, longitude? On the phone, he didn't give it to me. In this letter, okay, regarding the precise location of the crash site, from Granddad's journal, quotation marks. Trajectory track was plotted at 31 degrees, 20 minutes to 32 degrees north latitude. Object reversed course exactly without any discernible deviation. That means we are tracking on radar. This was tracked. It's coming like this. Then it stops and does this.
Wow.
That implies intelligent control, whether the craft is artificial intelligence, whether there are beings inside that are artificial intelligence, or if they are prime intelligence. There is intelligence.
Yep,
it's
for sure.
Latitude, longitude, and that the grandfather knows it was tracked and then does this. Object, reverse course exactly without any discernible deviation, proceeding to impact site between San Mateo Mountains and Sierra Blanca. Object debris spotted within 30-mile radius of the Army Air Force field. Now, another place in the letter, he talks about his grandfather working for the U.S. Air Force, or with Air Force, and he was Army. Okay, there was no United States Air Force until September 18th, 1947.
Right.
That was the date that Truman created the Central Intelligence Agency that Stanton Friedman and I and Bob Wood and others in all of our investigations of MJ-12. that the context for the creation of the Central Intelligence Agency was directly related to all of the previous crashes of unidentified aerial phenomena that came down in Socorro and places that were to the far west from Roswell. And that was in May. By June, Kenneth Arnold made international headlines talking about seeing 9 objects that were in this kind of a curved loop, and that they were doing this. And that's why he said it was like skipping a stone across the water, and they became known as flying saucers by Kenneth. Okay, that was June 24th. Crashes that our government knew about, whether the public did or not, in May of 1947. Kenneth Arnold makes international headlines June 24th around the world. 1 week later, people lose sight of this. June 24th, 7 days later, first week of July, Roswell.
Right.
3, and they are identified as wedge-shaped. A wedge is the shape of a piece of pie, not this, not a crescent, not a circle, not a lens. Wedge-shaped. 3, wedge-shaped craft. They were in 3 positions. One was between Roswell and Corona. That's the one that everybody heard about from the newspaper, the Daily Record, saying flying saucer crashes on New Mexico Ranch. But where that was, and that was called Landing Zone 1, 70 miles from the Roswell Army Airfield, 70 miles to a very wild, completely rural place that was about 37 miles from Corona. So neither Roswell nor Corona were the site. It was between Corona and Roswell. Okay, Landing Zone 1. That is where there were bodies. Landing Zone 2. Landing Zone 2 was at White Sands, and this is where they had 1 live and 2 dead.
Right. And
the documents through the MJ-12 work said that the investigators inside of Landing Zone 2 at White Sand in that first week of July, when they pushed against the walls, to their amazement, what we would call drawers suddenly came out, and what was called the International Phenomenon, the Unidentified Phenomenon Agency, what was it, IPU, International Phenomenon, that they were investigating for MJ-12, Phenomenon Unit, the International Phenomenon Unit. And that inside of those drawers, and in the IPU first report that was dated in 1947, it had and said body parts dissected as you would a frog of unknown origin were found at the site. Other information said they found body parts inside of these drawers.
Mm-hmm.
Other reports said they were found outside of the wedge-shaped craft. Nowhere do the documents say if they were animals, humans, or aliens. And this is really important because this was being reported in that week. Nothing like that was ever revealed. And the third location, all happening in the same time period, was the craft came down on the Mescalera Indian Reservation, and that was near Alamogordo. So those 3 of the first week of Roswell, the government tried to get away with, from then on, that there was only 1 incident, nothing else, and that is the big lie. So May, June 24th, first week in July, but it doesn't end there. because by September 18th of 1947, when Harry S. Truman not only created the Central Intelligence Agency to deal with UFOs and ETs as a primary, secret, highly classified subject, he separated the Army and the Air Force. There was not any U.S. Air Force till that day.
Mm-hmm.
In the letters, this says it was in the late 40s and refers to the USAF. So the whole history related to these metal pieces has to be after September 18th, 1947.
Right. Yep.
And the very fact that that latitude longitude defines Sierra Blanca and the San Mateo Mountains as the boundaries of where that craft came down in that latitude longitude. Look on a map. Sierra Blanca is on the east side of White Sands, and the San Mateo are on the west side. In between those two boundaries is White Sands.
Yeah.
So, Colonel Philip J. Corso, when I met him for the first time on July 4th, 1997, in Roswell, at the 50th anniversary of the, what we'll call the first week of July, the 3 crashes, but certainly not all that was happening.
Mm-hmm.
When he shook my hand, he had this smile on his face and he said, "I've always wanted to meet you and say, how the hell have you gotten so much classified information?" And that led to a fascinating discussion with him in which he said, and eventually in his own book, The Day After Roswell, which I recommend everybody should read,
Yep.
that he, Colonel Corso, working for General Arthur Trudeau, who was the first R&D head in the Pentagon, appointed by then President General Dwight D. Eisenhower, Colonel Corso said, I had an assignment to go to White Sands. And there I met an alien. It's right there. And he told me in his book, and he said the communication was telepathic. And the one sentence I can give you from the telepathy is, it's a new world coming if you can take it.
Right. And this backs up what the Army sergeant wrote in his letter.
That's right.
Yep.
So now, if you take the timeline from, let's say, 48, 49, our government knew a lot, and that the collection of this bismuth, and now I'm jumping, that I start investigating, and I'm on the aluminum, and we go through letters. I'll do this in more sequence and then come back to what I was going to tell you. When we got the next letter, it was dated April 22nd, and he had heard me on the radio talking about alcoa aluminum. So now we're at the second letter on April 22nd, and he says in one of the paragraphs, quote, "Granddad stated their own," meaning the United States government, whoever was doing analysis, stated their own analysis of the samples indicated it as pure extract aluminum as a conductor for the electromagnetic fields created in the propulsion systems. We're moving forward.
Yep.
Now, the third letter came dated May 27th. So we've gone from April, a whole month, to May, and I am reporting almost every week on the radio about what I'm finding. I have listened with interest to the ongoing reports about the samples that I'm doing. And he said, I now include in this shipment, dated May 27, 1996, the enclosed, and can only say that these scrapings came from the exterior underside of the, now in these letters, he goes between disc, capital D-I-S-C,
Mm-hmm.
but has words wedge shaped.
Shape. Yeah.
And so it is like people today will say UFO. Well, that UFO could be cylindrical, spherical, lens shaped, triangle, ice cream cone. There are dozens and dozens of shapes, and everybody says UFO. So clearly his grandfather referred to it, which the government was pushing at the time, that there was only the one crash. It was a disc flying saucer, which was not true.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I think he uses the capital word underside of the disc, because his own letters say wedge shape, like a piece of pie. It literally was a shell-like shielding of the disc, brittle and layered almost with a prefabricated design and placing. Keep in mind that these are the last of Granddad's samples. They have sat for years inside a closet with his personal effects. And Art says, I'm going to send you some of this. He says, I only have 6 pieces.
Right.
And he said, Whitley Strieber wants some, and I want Jacques Vallée. And we knew that of these 6 pieces, they were going to have to be cut in order to be studied. And that's the beginning of how this stuff started going out. And he sent me 2 or 3. Well, interesting the way life and work weaves. I knew a microbiologist at the University of Michigan who had helped me immensely in all the work that I had started doing in crop circle investigations in 1992, 3, 4, 5, 6, by the time of the first letter. So after Alcoa Aluminum, I thought of him. Can I call him? He's very interested in the physics of crop formations. Maybe he would be able, with using facilities at the University of Michigan, one of the better universities in the United States. And I called him up and said, now I've got, in addition to the aluminum, I've got this really, it's silver on one side, it's
Right.
black on the bottom, it's clearly layered. Can you help me? Is there any way that you can do some really high-end quality examinations and tell me what is the black, what is the silver, how is it made? And he said, oh, I would love to. But Linda, you are never, ever to use my name.
Mm-hmm.
You can say University of Michigan, but nothing else. So this started a saga that is going on to this day with To the Stars, the Tom DeLonge, Hal Puthoff, Steve Justice, Semivan, the group, that they are investigating exactly this one of my
Yeah.
pieces that
Yep.
came all the way back 22 years. And it is amazing that this material, not a single lab or person anywhere on this planet, after many challenges, has ever been able to reproduce.
Right.
It is at the atomic and the molecular level known now as nanotechnology. That's
Wow.
what this is. When
Well,
Tom DeLonge and TTSA use the word meta materials, take the meta out. It's nanotechnology. This is what it is, and they know. Why is this significant? You will hear people even today, oh, it's just an accumulation in a lab where they poured metals in. Or, oh, it's electroplating. And people who say that are showing their profound ignorance that they have not studied all of the work that I did with the University of Michigan. Carnegie Institute in Washington, D.C. did the ion microprobe analysis to look at the isotopic ratio of the magnesium that we discovered. So there are really sophisticated labs with really sophisticated work. Fills an entire binder. Sorry. That I delivered one of my binders of 22 years to TTSA with one of the pieces of mine that they're now studying. I have 2 binders in my office, and I have my own other piece of magnesium, zinc, and aluminum, which I continue to study. What happened that when the University of Michigan scientist got this, and he started taking photographs, and he called me up and he said, you know, this is puzzling. We've got to do several. We want to do energy dispersive. We want to do wave dispersive. We want to do electron microscopy. We want to do electron microscopy in what's called the EDS mode. And he said, I need your approval that we may have to do the end of a pin. We may have to do some penetration.
Right.
And I said, please, I just don't want any of this destroyed. We have only a little bit. And if the story is true, that this material came from the bottom of a wedge-shaped craft, and another sentence in another letter, he said, and his grandfather reported, in fact, it's worth reading what the grandfather, this is again in the 5th letter. He puts again quotes. In addition to the latitude, longitude that would end up in White Sands, this is a quote from his granddad's journal. Quote, sample extraction. We're talking about the what turned out to be the bismuth magnesium, and I'll give you more specs on this in a second. Sample extraction that the grandfather pulled from the bottom radiated light for a full 3 hours. Originally located on the central underside of a wedge-shaped capital DISC. Those are totally opposite, but we've talked about why he would say that. It's wedge-shaped. Speculate some type of shielding to enable craft and crew to survive accelerated entry into atmosphere when craft was experiencing uncontrolled descent, and that there was ash, and that all of the remains were bagged in metal footlockers, and they were sent to the New Mexico Institute of Mining and Technology, secondary examinations at Los Alamos facility, and the footlockers after that. New Mexico Tech, Los Alamos. Los Alamos at that time was the single most secret, most protected lab in the United States, because that's where the bomb had been developed, and it dropped in 1945 on Japan, the test at Los Alamos. And we're talking about it has to be after September 1847. But that's only 45, that's only 2 years after the bombs dropped, and that the likelihood is that the bismuth, magnesium, and the aluminum came from a crash in 48 or 49. We're still within 5 years, 4 to 5 years. So New Mexico Tech would have been close to White Sands. Next stop, Los Alamos, and then footlockers subsequently airlifted by courier to Wright Field, Ohio, which became Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, also later in the 40s. Really important labs where no information is going to get out. So when I started getting by fax, back then, believe it or not, no computers. We were all doing faxes, Art to me, me to him, the scientists' faxes. The first fax that came out showing me that what they were finding from the silver and black with all of the layers. And I have a really great photo. Okay, this is a photo that I took at the Franklin Mint in 1999, September, with working with a technician who had a very, very good macro lens where we could get in and fill the screen with this is a small piece. This is probably 3/4 of an inch long and less than 1/4 of an inch high. But I wanted to be able to show all of the layers, which are what make this so consequential. And what you're looking at is the bottom is black, the top is silver. And the reason is the black is the bismuth, 1 to 4 microns. That's equivalent to about the diameter of half of a human blood cell. And above each of the black bismuth layers is a silver layer that is 97.6% magnesium and 2.4% zinc. That is an alloy. And they alternate for approximately 30 layers, pure bismuth to magnesium zinc, and that each of the pieces was not very long, and the height is less than 1/4 of an inch, to give you.
Right.
Okay. So when I learned this is what this is made out of, I went to an exotic metals manufacturer in New Jersey, and I asked him, can you explain to me how you would make a layered metal piece that I've gotten the specs from the University of Michigan? And I was recording to put on Coast to Coast with Art, the report. Did it with dozens of scientists. And he started laughing. And he started laughing because he said, you can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
You can't put magnesium and bismuth together. They immediately fall apart. He said, you'd have to have a bonding agent. I said, well, we've looked for a bonding agent and there's nothing. This is bound at the atomic and molecular level. And that exotic metals manufacturer laughed again and said, it's not possible. Well, that was sort of where the rubber hit the road, that everywhere I went, into normal labs, aerospace, Paul Chu, who was the genius with superconductors down in Houston, he had a piece for 2 months and sent me back a letter that is in my archive that what he was looking for, he couldn't find. Everybody who was handling it, and I had a notebook of about 100 people that I was calling and doing interviews or sending out pieces to get information. And on the air, because I was on the air every week with Art, I was putting out, if there's anybody out there who has any ability to try to duplicate this, get in touch with me, and I'd give out my phone number, my address, my fax number. Well, what started happening is I started getting whistleblowers saying, we know what this does. You get it in the right kind of field and it turns into a lifting body. That was the phrase they kept using. Neutralize gravity.
Yeah.
So this is 96, 97, 98, 99, 2000, go all the way up to 2014, all that time. 2014, I'm at a conference and a man approaches me and says, I know a lot about the bismuth magnesium. In a conference, it's one of the best places in the world for whistleblowers to come. I'm surrounded by 50 people after doing a presentation. It's loud, it's noisy, and this is how I got to hear these sentences. I worked at Area 51 S4, and I worked on a slab of this material that you've got little pieces of. He said, I worked with a slab that was 6 feet by 3 feet. And he said, that aluminum is important. They are both skins. That's the word he used. He said, the bismuth magnesium goes on the outside of the craft. That's the silver.
Mm-hmm.
On the inside, a few inches away, is the pure aluminum. And it must be, he said, at least 99.5% pure aluminum, which is the first I got back from Alcoa. In between, he said, you remember how in some of those earlier reports from New Mexico, ranchers said that they came across debris and it looked like horse hair was hanging out of the debris and glowing light at the end? He said that is what is necessary in these craft. We today would talk about it and call it fiber optics. He said it's way more sophisticated than fiber optics. And he said we were able at Area 51 S4 to be able to get enough information that we know that when those two skins, and so it would be the entire aluminum would be on the inside and the bismuth magnesium would be on the outside, and in between is all of this AI functioning material. He said it brings gravity to zero. That's exactly the way he put it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you bring gravity to zero, you also get rid of inertial forces.
Yep.
And then he said, and that's why there are radar operators who have seen an unidentified going at thousands of miles an hour, stop on a dime, do a 90-degree turn. And he said, because Linda, you could, when this is operating, you could stand there and blow on one of these craft in the zero gravity, zero inertial force, and it would move. There's no inertial force. Well, I have now, we're talking in the end of 2019. That the discussion at the conference was in 2014. In between, I have had other whistleblowers, and I have learned that it isn't just pure aluminum. It has atomically placed, meaning all of this is about putting everything together atom by atom by atom at a molecular level. This is nanotechnology. Nobody anywhere on planet Earth in the human race had the ability to produce this bismuth, magnesium, zinc, and the pure aluminum in 1947, 48, 49, the 50s, 60s, 70s. We get up to the 80s, who knows what the black world had been able to back engineer by then, because that's what they've been trying to do. They've been trying for 70 years to try to back engineer, understand extraterrestrial technology, and build it and patent it and get more power on the planet. So if the key to all of it, the bismuth, magnesium, zinc, is beautiful and strange and mysterious and challenging, but the key may be atomically placed monoatomic iridium inside of the 99.5% aluminum, that you've got to have both skins in order for these craft to do the amazing things that they do. Now, I personally do not see that reporting honestly everything that I have learned in the last 22 years should be a problem for anyone.